Hi there, it is Kelsey with Shipwreck Beads, and today we're going to be making a wrap bracelet with the new Cornelian Star beads from Preciosa. I don't do a whole lot with seed beads, but I do really like making these wrap bracelets. They're a lot of fun and easy to make, and the perfect project for just sitting while you're watching TV. They are a little time consuming, but they're really simple. So we'll be making that today, and I'll show you some of the different things that you might come into issue with when you're working with the beads and working with your wrap bracelet. So we'll show you how to start and finish, and also how to add thread if you're making an extra long bracelet. Hi Carla, welcome today. And we'll also be doing a giveaway. So I've got some extra beads that we'll be giving away. I've got a really cool notepad, and I will also be giving away one of the finished bracelets that we'll make today. But first off, I just want to say that everything on our website is on sale for up to 65% off. Today is the last day of the sale. So if you want to get some of these star beads, they're 15% off. Tiara Cast is 25% off. Swarovski is 35% off. So yeah, there's some really great deals on our website. You can go check that out. Also, a little bit of business. We've got Bead Fest coming up. I know I've been talking about that a lot, but I'm super excited. So make sure and check out the Bead Fest website for more details on that. It'll be held in Tacoma, Washington this year, and that's October 14th, 15th, and 16th. They've got some great workshops, some great vendors. I'll be hosting $5 make and takes on all 3 days, so there's 2 each day. And then also, we've got our artisan market coming up. I know it's hard to think about that, you know, winter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's all right around the corner. And so we are just now starting to accept applications for our winter market, which is held on Small Business Saturday, and that is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So before you hit up those after you hit up those big box stores on Black Friday, you can support some small businesses and come out on November 26th and check out our artisan market. We have spaces for over 95 vendors, and it's going to be a great event. It always is. I'm really excited about it. We're accepting applications, so if you're interested and want to apply, you can go to send me an email at market@shipwreckbeads.com, and we'll get you set up with an application. So we'll go ahead and get started with our project today. Like I said, we'll be using the Cornelian Star beads. They come in 2 different sizes, and that's my phone ringing, so we're just going to ignore that and let the answering machine pick it up. But the star beads are really cool. So they're a white heart seed bead, so it's a translucent glass with a white heart center, but it's got this star shape, so it creates these really nice stripes on the beads. They're really cool. And they come in a couple different sizes. We've got the 6/0 seed bead. So that's these little guys. Well, I'll angle you down and show you. Yay, Ashley, welcome. All right, so now you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So I've just got them all in a pile, but you can see the different colors we have. They've got this bigger size. These are a 32 and 34. They're like a crow bead. And then they're also got the rainbow colors in the size 6. So we'll be making those. So today what I did, because it is a rather lengthy project, I made one, sort of pre-made it, so that way I don't have to make the whole bracelet, and I can show you some different techniques in working with it. So I did this sort of angled pattern, and it's really helpful when you get started. This is the notepad we'll be giving away, but I'm going to borrow a sheet of it. So this is grid paper, and it's really helpful to sort of sketch out your design, especially when you're doing something where you've got a pattern and you need to keep track of what colors you're using. So we're just going to go ahead, and I'm going to sort of sketch out just so I have a basic idea of what my design's going to look like. So I'm going to start with my yellow beads, and so I'm just going to do the letter for each of the colors, and you can kind of see the grid paper. Yellow, and I'm not going in the same order as the rainbow. I'm going to keep it a little different. So when you're doing it, and when you want to have your stripes like this, then you're going to start with a new color each time and sort of build on it. So I'm going to start yellow, and then I'm going to go blue, yellow, then green, blue, yellow. and then orange, green, blue, and then red, red, orange, green, purple, red, orange, then back to yellow, purple, red, blue, yellow, purple. And so you can see I've got my yellow coming down, and it just will create an angled pattern. So that's just sort of, graph paper comes in real handy if you're trying to plan out your design. Let's turn it upright. So I know those are a little backwards, but you can kind of see where I'm going with that. And so it makes it easy to plan out your design, and you can do this with wrap beads, you can do it with loomed pieces. It helps also if you have colored pencils, you can actually color in your squares to give you a better idea of what you're doing. So what we'll be using is I've got one of these macrame boards from the Beadsmith. It's a foam piece, and it's pretty thick, and it's got these sort of notches every ½ inch. Might be ¼ inch. And so this is a great way to anchor your beads or your piece onto and have a nice solid workspace. They also come sort of in half size for like a travel board. So this, what we'll do is we're going to start by, I've got my leather. So this is a 5-foot section of leather. Depending on how long of a bracelet you want to make, you're going to need to adjust your measurements on how much you're going to add. And then I also have some thread, a big eye needle. So I like the big eye needles because they're really easy to thread, and I just lost all of them there. And so the eye of the needle makes up most of the length. So it's connected at the top and the bottom of the needle, and then it's open in the center, so it makes it really easy to thread. And so we'll be using that to string. I have a shank button, so that's where the button's flat on top and it has the little loop on the back. But it also, this technique will also work with your regular 2-hold style buttons as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by stringing our button on. And I've seen these bracelets constructed in a bunch of different ways, so there's really not a right or wrong way to do it. I'm just going to teach you the way that I do it. So I've got my leather folded in half, and I've got my button at the very center, and now I'm going to thread my needle. And the thread I'm using today is KO thread. It's a Japanese nylon, it's made in Japan, and it's a nylon beading wire. I prefer this beading thread. I prefer this to Nymo because I find that it is less prone to tangling, and it is less prone to fraying as well. So as with any nylon cord, you kind of want to give it a little tug just to eliminate the curl from the string. And I usually work with about 2 yards. And again, we're going to double it up. So we're going to just trim that and then thread the needle on. And again, because it's the big eye needle, you can see it's got a really nice big hole, so it's really easy to thread. And they come in 2 different lengths. So this is the shorter big eye needle, and there's also a longer one as well. And just because they're not a traditional needle does not mean they're still not very sharp, so do watch out for that. So we're going to center up the needle on the thread. And depending on how you want your piece to look, is you want to go with a coordinating color to your leather or to whatever material you're going to use as your base. But I'm using the white thread just to give it a little more contrast and make it easier to see what it is I'm doing. So what I like to do is I'm going to tie an overhand knot to secure my button, but I'm also going to tie the threads in with that knot. And this is where if you're using so if I was using a black thread, you wouldn't actually see the thread in the knot, but you're going to be able to see it here. So you can see I've got my thread coming out here and I've got my knot. And we're just going to tighten that up. And we want to have a little bit of space because that's where we're going to be able to anchor the knot down, or anchor the button when we put on the bracelet. So now I've got my thread. and I want to have my thread coming off to my left-hand side. So it is kind of backwards in the video. And what I like to do is I will leave my threads long until the very end, and then I will do all my trimming and gluing at the very end. So we're going to secure the button in the top center notch, like so. And this foam is really flexible. It's not going to damage your piece at all. It's not going to create any bends or anything like that. And then at the bottom, I'm going to secure the leather into the bottom. And so that's going to hold my threads, my leather still while I string my beads on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my thread and wrap it around my leather at the very top near the knot, just 3 or 4 times. And so what I've seen other people do also is that they will just tie the knot to the leather and then wrap it around, and either way will work just fine. Again, it's one of those things that, you know, as long as you're happy with how it looks and it's nice and secure, then that's what matters. Sometimes there's not really a right or wrong way. So we just want to make sure and push that string right up there, and now we're going to start stringing on our beads. So you want to start from, you always want to start from one side and go to the other, and you want to stay consistent with that. So I always start on my left side and I go towards the right. So it's just kind of like reading a book. And so to start out, we're going to start by stringing just one bead onto our needle because it's easier and it makes a much more seamless looking piece if you kind of angle it out from the top, because as you can see the leather's connected up here, so you've got a much less space to work with. So we're going to start with just one bead. We're going to bring that over and bring it over to the right side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my needle underneath the leather from the going right to left now, through my bead, and then underneath the second piece of leather. And then just pull it snug and make sure and sort of push your bead up into that angle there. So now with the second row, we're going to do 2 beads. And again, with my pattern, I'm starting with the yellow, and then blue is my second color. And this is going to give us some really cool diagonal looking stripes. So again, I'm putting 2 beads on this time, going from the left to the right over the top of the leather. Now I'm going to go under the leather, through the beads, and under the leather again. And you don't want to use too much string because then it can get tangled. And I will show you how you can add extra string in if you're making a longer piece and you need to add more. So you want to make sure as you're going, see how I've got a little bit of thread sort of popping out? You want to make sure your thread, the tension on your threads is even as you go, because that's not something you can really adjust after the fact. So now I've got 2, and now I'm going to go with 3 beads. So now to keep up with my pattern, I'm going to add my new color, which is green. Then I'm going to add a blue bead and a yellow bead. And again, you're going to go over the top, under, through the beads, and under again. And so you can kind of see if you were to add just 3 beads from the get-go, it wouldn't give you the same sort of start to your piece. And with any time when you're doing any type of bead weaving or anything like that, the first couple stitches, the first couple rows are always going to be a little bit harder to get started. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to add, now we're going to just continue with adding 3 beads. You can always go wider if you like. You can add different sizes of beads in there. There's some really cool things you can do with this basic technique. So one thing also to be conscious of when you're making these types of bracelets is that it's very important to use a consistent width, because you can get some really wonky, it can look kind of wonky if they if you're using different size beads. And with the roquels, with the seed beads, is they're not, the check seed beads, is they're not uniform like your delicas are always. So you might end up with some beads that are considerably smaller than some of your other beads. So you can see, like this red bead here, they're the same size, but you can see it's a little bit larger than that blue bead. So you just want to be conscious of that as you're creating your piece, so you don't get some rows that are a lot shorter than other rows. Okay. So again, you're going to go over the top, under the first leather strand, through your beads, and under again. And again, you want to make sure and make it nice and tight as you go. So we'll just do a few more rows like this, and then we'll move on and I will show you how to finish it up, and also how to add more string if you are making an extra long piece and need to add more thread in, because you want to make sure you're working with a manageable length of thread. Again, you don't want it too long, because otherwise it's going to get tangled on you, and then you'll have to start all over, and that's no fun. Although one thing that's great about the size 6 seed bead is it does have a fairly large hole, so a lot of times it will still accommodate the size of a knot going through it. So not all hope is lost. Sometimes you can still get your bead, your needle and thread to go through, even if your string does end up with a little knot in it. But you want to try and avoid that if you can. So again, you're going to string your beads on from the left, go over the top of the leather, and then going from right to left, you're going to go under the leather, through the beads, and pull it tight. So you can see we've created one full section, and we'll just go ahead and finish out a couple more rows so that you can see how the pattern develops. So again, we're starting with the yellow, and now we're going to go yellow, blue, and purple. Oh, or sorry, blue, yellow, and purple. And if you do get to a point where you've messed up the pattern, it is a pretty easy fix to take off the rows. So we'll just string this one on here, and then I'll show you how you can fix that. So you go under, through your beads, and then back through. And so if you end up where your pattern doesn't quite match up, then what you can do is take off or unattach one of the strands of leather, and then just unthread it from your thread, and then those beads will just pop right off. And then you want to make sure you bring your leather or your thread back around. So it is pretty easy to fix if you do end up putting in the wrong pattern. And it's much easier to just sort of unthread it from the leather than it is to try and weave it back through, because sometimes if your needle pierces the thread, it can cause your thread to fray, and that's not good, because it'll eventually cause a weak spot and make it rip or make it fall apart, and you don't want that. So as you can see, it's really simple. It is a little on the time consuming side, but this is an easy project to just kind of set on your lap while you're watching TV. I know I'm really excited for the fact that all my shows are coming back this fall. I love comic book superhero shows, much to my husband's dismay. So there you have it. You can see how the pattern's starting to repeat itself from the top. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this one off, and I already have one that's mostly made. So this is already about 11 inches long. So what I'm going to do, because I want my work to be up at the top rather than the bottom because it just makes it easier to do, I'm going to wrap my piece around the back and secure my button to one of the side sections or one of the side notches. And then I'm going to still secure my leather at the bottom of the macrame board. So these macrame boards are really easy to use. They work great for macrame too, but I like to use them for this as well. And one thing you can do also is, because they're foam, if you just need to set your project aside, you can stick your needle right into the foam, and that'll keep it nice and secure, and you won't lose your needle to the floor or wherever. Okay, so now when you get to a point where you've used up most of your thread and you need to add more in, this is why I like the big eye needles too, because they come in a nice 4-pack, and I usually end up using 2 needles at a time when I'm working on one of these bracelets. So I'm going to pull off some extra thread. And again, with any time you use nylon thread, you want to give it a tug just because you can see on this end, oh, maybe you can't, but you can see how it comes off the spool curly. So you just give it a tug, and that's going to eliminate that curl. And again, the white's a little hard to see, but give it a tug, and then you won't have that curl in your thread. But one thing that's great about the KO thread is it's not going to stretch as much as Nymo. All right, so now what you're going to do to add more string in, I'm going to just sort of pull that off to the side there. Hook that in so that's out of my way. Is we're going to go up about 3 rows. And you're just going to string the beads through, basically like you're weaving it in, like you're doing your rows like you normally would, but you're just going to go back through what you've already done, again doing the over under like we did before. And then when you're finished, you'll just add a drop of glue and trim the ends of the string. And this string won't go anywhere because you've gone back through several rows. It's not going to fall out. That glue is going to hold it in place, so you don't really need to worry about it falling apart, which I know is always a concern. But I've made a lot of these bracelets, and I've worn a lot of these bracelets, and this is a really easy way to do that. So you're just going to go back 3 or 4 rows. I usually go back 3. I don't know, when it comes to beading, I tend to favor odd numbers. When it's the volume on my TV, it's got to be an even number. Or a 5, because 5 in my head for some reason is also somewhat an even number because it's halfway between 0 and 10. I don't know, my husband thinks I'm a little crazy, but I think we all have our little craziness. So I'm going to just cut my needle, my extra needle off. And so I do have these threads coming off, but again, I'm going to wait till the end to cut those and glue them and trim them and glue them at the same time, because that way I'm not dealing with sections that have wet glue on them. So that's why I like to wait till the end. So we're going to finish up the next couple rows just so you can see how you finish a piece. So again, it's keeping with the same pattern. So once you've done and woven through the last 3, you can then just start weaving like you normally would. And you can kind of see it is a little bit, the white thread is a little bit thicker here, but once the piece is finished and those ends are trimmed, it's going to be really hard to tell where you actually added in the thread. So don't worry about that if that's something that concerns you. So when you're making a wrap bracelet, you typically want to add have about 6.5 inches of beads per wrap. You can also add a little bit more, but you don't want to make it too big. And I'll actually show you when we finish it up how to make it an adjustable size. So that way if you're not quite sure how big to make it, then that's one thing, then you can make it adjustable. And that's why I like to put, when I start my bracelets, I like to have my button on the looped end, because then when I show you how to finish it up, you'll see how to make it adjustable. But yeah, Meredith, these macrame boards are great. They're great for macrame. They're great for this type of basic weaving. They're really lightweight. They travel really well. The travel size board is actually half the size of the the normal size board, and they're pretty inexpensive. They're definitely a great investment, and they are on sale right now. So if you're interested in getting one, I would definitely jump on that. Again, everything on our website right now is up to 65% off. There's some really great deals, so I would check that out. So we're just going to do a few more rows. We've got, oh, see, I messed up the pattern. I needed to do an orange, green, and blue. So we're going to just take this one off. Again, unthread on that side, and then those beads will just going to pop right off. So that's why it's handy to draw out your design ahead of time. I know I sometimes have a really hard time visualizing how things are going to line up. And with a lot of beading, you can really just go, and then if you don't like it, unstring it. But with something like this, where it's a little more time consuming, you want to make sure and plan it out a little bit more. I'm not really a planner, so it does kind of pain me to say that, but you know, sometimes it's worth taking the few extra steps to plan it out. Alrighty. What am I doing next? Okay, red, then orange, then green. So with these colors, you could always do a pattern where you're doing the Roy G. Biv of the rainbow, but I wanted something that still had the rainbow colors but wasn't your typical rainbow pattern. So that's why I kind of did it in an off pattern. But that's all right. However you want to do it. There's really no right or wrong way. And, oh, red first. Ah, these little beads, man. They're not my favorite. But they sure do look cool when you get them all lined up in a bracelet like this. So we'll do a couple more rows. And again, just to reiterate, for those of you who just joined us, you're going to go over the top. So we'll string on our beads. So we've got yellow, purple, and red. They kind of look like candy, don't they? So you're going to go bring your beads from left to right over the top of the leather, then go under the leather, through your beads, and under the leather again. Blue, yellow, and purple. And one thing with these bracelets too is even if you don't want to use a button, you can always use a lobster clasp and then use it to just clip to your leather at the end. And I'll show you how to do that. Well, not with the lobster claw, but I'll show you when we finish it up. So we'll do a couple more rows and then we'll start decreasing the size. So basically when you're finishing up, you're going to go keep with the same like we did when we started. So we did 1, 2, 3 with our rows. We're going to do 3, 2, 1 to finish it up. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to do one more row of 3, I think. Oh, sorry. orange, green, and blue. Ouch. Okay, now we're going to do, I think we'll do one more row of 3 actually. Oh, where's red beads? Do red, orange, green. So actually I think I want to end on purple. So we'll do a couple more rows. Alright, so now we're going to go purple, red, and orange. Okay. And now we'll do purple and red, so we're going to start decreasing. And sometimes when you're starting to decrease your pattern, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my leather and I'm going to put them through the same notch, because then that's going to give me sort of the decrease in size in my leather, and it's just going to make it easier to get those beads on there. So now I'm going to do 2 beads. So I'm going to do red and purple, and now I'm going to do just 1 purple bead. So that's how you finish that up. You want to make sure and pull it nice and snug, and then what you'll do is you're going to wrap that thread around the leather like 3 or 4 times, however many times you did it when you started, that's how many times you're going to do it at the end. And so that's going to anchor that in place. Now we're going to go ahead and take that off of the bead mat, and I'm going to trim my needle off because we're not going to need that anymore, and I don't want to get stabbed by it because it hurts. So now I'm going to line up my thread with my leather, and I'm going to tie a knot. And you want to make sure that all of your threads are coming through, and you're going to tighten that up. Make sure and pull your string and get that all tightened up there. And so that's how you finish. So now what you're going to do is I like to make a couple sections where I can attach my button to. So we're going to tie, so we'll go ahead and make sure those threads are out of the way. So we're going to tie another knot, and before you tighten it up, you want to make sure that your button's going to fit through the knot. So you don't want to make it, you don't want to tighten it up. You want to make sure you can still adjust the knot if you need to. So that's going to fit through just fine. So now I'm going to tighten that up all the way. And I have 1 space. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add 2 more, because that's going to allow my bracelet to be somewhat adjustable. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but you want to make sure that your space between your knots is uniform. And again, I like odd numbers, so I'm going with 3 sections. That one's a little bit bigger, but that's okay. And so now when you're putting your bracelet on, you can adjust based on the size of your wrist. So if you like it a little snugger or a little more loose, or if you have thinner wrists or thicker wrists, either way, you can make it more adjustable. And so again, this works with shank buttons. You can do this with the regular 2-hole buttons. You can also, if you wanted, if you're using a really delicate, instead of leather, you can use, I really like the Chinese knotting cord, the Lovely Knots cord. Works really well with wrap bracelets. It gives it sort of a more delicate feel, but you can also use a lobster claw. Instead of attaching a button, you just attach a lobster claw, and then you Are we back? I think we're back. All right, so then to give it a more finished look, I'm going to add one of these larger crow beads in, and then just tie a knot in the end, and that just gives it just a little something extra when you're selling your jewelry or making jewelry for other people. Sometimes it's just really nice to add those extra little details in. And what I always like to do is I don't like to make everything even, so I'm going to make one knot closer than the other because I just think that's more visually interesting to have them sort of fall at different lengths. And then when I cut my cord, I always cut it at an angle, again, because I just like the way that it looks better. And this leather shouldn't come unknotted, but you can add some glue there if you like. And now what we'll go ahead and do is I'm going to add, I've got my GS Hypo Cement. I like using this stuff. There's also a fabric glue that you can use as well. Get that off there because it has a really fine, needle fine tip. And so it's great for working with these small areas. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some glue right where these threads are popping out, and then also on the opposite side as well, just to kind of anchor that in there a little bit more. Just add a little bit of glue, and this stuff will dry clear, so it will not show up in your final design. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of glue on my cord on where I started and finished the bracelet. And that'll keep those ends from fraying as well. Right? So then, usually you want to wait till the glue dries to trim it, but I'm not going to wait right now. We're just going to trim these off. Just so you can see the finished piece. And you want to pull it snug and then trim. So now you can see the finished piece, and you can't tell where I added in that thread as you look at it. So it gives you this is a nice double wrap bracelet. The length of the beading is about 13.5 inches. So again, you want to do about 6.5 inches per wrap. And then if you're making it adjustable like I did here, then you have a little bit more leeway with how long of the beaded sections that you make. So that is how you make a wrap bracelet. And again, you can use any kinds of beads. You do want to make sure that you do have a uniform size, but look at how pretty that pattern is. It's a lot of fun. And so this whole piece probably took me about an hour and a half to make, which is why I had it pre-made, you know, magic of TV, where they do those cooking shows and they bring out the whole cooked turkey that's, you know, after 5 minutes after putting it in the oven. Magic of TV, right? All right, so let's angle back up. Hi. All right, so I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're going to be doing a giveaway. So I'm going to be giving away a finished bracelet. We've got the little notepad with your grid paper, and I'll also be giving away some of my extra Cornelian Star beads that I have, so that way you can have a finished piece of jewelry and also some beads that you can play around with yourself. So I want you to comment on this video post and let me know what you'll do with the Cornelian Star beads if you win them. If you don't want to wait around for a giveaway though, then you can actually go purchase them on our website right now. The star beads are 15% off. And they're brand new. So if you don't want to wait to see if you win, you can always go buy them right now on our website. But yes, so comment on this post. Let me know what you would do with the Cornelian Star beads, what you like about them. Yeah, and then you will announce the winner on Friday. So comment on the video. Let me know what you like, and we will see see you on Friday at 4 p.m. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.